and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we're so glad to have you here. Students at Princeton University took civic engagement to the next level this week, hosting a forum for the candidates vying to represent New Jersey's 12th congressional district. The event was organized by the American Whig-Cliosophic Society, the NAACP Princeton University Chapter, and Vote 100. It brought together Democratic hopefuls in a crowded primary to succeed Congresswoman Watson Coleman, who is retiring. Joining us now is one of the student organizers, Alejandra Ramos, president of the Whig-Clio Society. Alejandra, welcome. Good to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, good to see you. So you helped organize a student-led forum for the 12th congressional primary just a few days ago. First, tell us a little bit about your organization and why you all stepped up and got involved in this debate.
Yeah, so basically, the organization happened probably right after my vice president and I were elected. So Noah Barkin served as the vice president. And one of the big things that we wanted to do is we wanted to, aside just hosting events, really tailored to the student interests, we wanted to bring lively discussions about New Jersey politics and also about just Princeton politics in general. So Noah Barkin and I sat down, I want to say December 14th, and we really kind of just wanted to start planning this. And we sent out the first email of communication to the university, Otis, on I believe it was December 16th, just kind of tailoring like the details of the event, kind of what we wanted the event to look, and then also going forward, like the different like information of the candidates with their emails for outreach and stuff because that had to be done through the university. But it was a lot of fun. It was definitely
Yeah.
something that was a very fruitful experience and had a lot of meetings and a lot of different logistical components. But it was great.
Well, this is what the Whig-Clio Society does. Can you tell our viewers, for who may not be familiar with it, what it is that your organization does?
Yeah. So the society is the oldest collegiate literary and debating society in the United States. And we're also Princeton's political, literary, and debating society. So we try to host not just a lot of like debates for people to come and watch on Princeton's campus, but we also have a wide variety of speakers. We've been trying to just increase the number of speakers that we've had from past years to this year. We have 3 to 4 events, we want to say, every week. Most recently, I want to say I moderated a talk between with Curtis Lewa in the room, and we had a lot of student turnout for that event. And then tomorrow we're hosting John Bolton near Princeton's campus, done by the society. So there's definitely always a lot going on, and just we really are trying to just bring a lot of like people and a lot of different like points of views to all of Princeton's community members and students.
Yeah, so Princeton is part of the 12th Congressional District. Watson Coleman, who has represented that district for many, many years, is retiring. And there are, 11 candidates running. How many were you able to coordinate and bring to the platform and to the conversation?
Yeah. So we actually had 11 people. So there were 11 candidates that were at our conversation, at our debate. Noah Barkin had to add an extra 4 feet to the stage, and we still had to have 2 rows of just people in the front and in the back. We alphabetized them by first name. And then there were 2 candidates that weren't able to make it, Assemblywoman Verlina Reynolds-Jackson, and then the East Brunswick Mayor Brad Cohen. And then the Republican candidate was also not able to make it. But we did a lot of outreach to all of them. It was a lot of just emails following up and then just making sure that we were getting in touch with the right people to ensure that their points of views and perspectives could be heard by the communities and neighborhoods right down our street.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the forum. It was kind of described as a call to action for communities across the 12th district. So what were some of the topics that you were able to dive into, questions that you and your co-sponsors wanted the candidates to address?
Yeah, definitely. One of the big things when we were all meeting, and kind of also one of the big things that I wanted for them to be able to describe, is because there are so many candidates in this race. We wanted for them to be able to kind of just talk about specific things and also with their answers be able to distinguish themselves from one another. So the first question, and it was a question that I asked, was about like, what is one concrete policy that they will introduce that clearly distinguishes them from all the other candidates like present there today. And there were different like calls to actions around like healthcare, affordability, education, and housing, and all these different things. But we also kind of wanted to have like different questions that kind of related to the campus, such as like student dissent, voting rights, and then also like just for a lot of them like immigration with K through 12, like public and private schools, and then also like minority majority strategy, like kind of questions that would happen like should you be elected, like how would you deal with kind of then different circumstances should they arise, and how are you going to make sure that like you can like keep on fulfilling the promises that you are making to the constituents regardless of the political situation or political climate, as it changes or as it evolves later on.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I've moderated a debate or two myself. I know how difficult it can be to ensure that everybody's being able to have their voice heard and that you get information that's really helpful to the voters out, because that really ultimately is what it's all about, right? People like to, candidates like to sometimes go back and forth for quick sound bites or from the social media. But now that the debate has taken place, was there anything that stood out to you? Any moments, exchanges, or perhaps positions that the candidates were able to address that really resonated or perhaps even surprised you all?
I think for a lot of the candidates, they definitely just were bringing back their like platforms, kind of where they stood, and just kept grounding their issues back in the same things. So they all were just echoing kind of like their own sentiments. They all often agreed on quite a lot of different topics and just a lot of different discussions. I do think one of the most like heartfelt questions, and I think all the candidates were like, "This is such a cute question," was posed by one of the audience members about like who is a candidate that should it not be themselves that they would vote for and stuff. So a lot of like people kind of then like all the candidates and were kind of just talking about how, oh, we've done so many debates and just forums that like at this point like we've all also like become friends. And I think that idea of also just showing mutual support for one another was definitely like I think a nice thing to see for all of the audience and community members there, about like really just caring for the people and wanting to make sure that like things and promises are fulfilled.
Yeah, so this primary for the 12th district, very crowded, 11 candidates there, 13 in all. So did this allow for members of the community, other voters to participate, or was it more for the Princeton University students there? How did that
Yeah.
work?
So once again, Noah Barkin, he had a huge role in organizing this, and kind of just getting the word out there. So he was able to share it out on like the email listserv for our community auditors, like people taking classes here. Also on our website, we had listed it there, open to the public. Community members like free and open to attend. Ian Mann, who was with Vote 100, also did outreach with like just the different like political organizations that he was familiar with near the area. And then our representatives from the NAACP also did outreach kind of like to Rider University and then to other campuses that we've worked with before. I do want to say that there was definitely a large presence of community members. And while we did have some questions that like were maybe a little bit more like student specific, such as student dissent on campuses, one of the big things that like we also wanted to make sure is like we talked about housing affordability, like voting rights and things that were truly impacting everyone. And I do think a lot of like the community members did enjoy it. And there was also just an opportunity for community members to, with the QR code, like be able to scan it in, and submit their questions, as well as also like if needed, like with pencil paper, turn in any of their questions, and then they were asked to the candidates and stuff. So there were some answers there as well.
And with so many people, it's hard to, get to everyone to ensure without it going all night long, right? But
Yes.
you talk a lot about civic engagement, how that starts long before election day. Were there any issues that the candidates talked about that young people, voters in the audience, really seemed to be passionate about during the forum?
Yeah. I think of the issues that I think the candidates talked about, obviously you have the idea of like voting rights, like why are the people, and why specifically youth, why are they unmotivated to go voting the polls, going to the polls, casting their votes, having their voices heard. And just a lot of like the candidates had different ideas and all like forms of solutions on how to navigate this. One of the other issues that the candidates all at some point kind of brought up or touched on in one way or another was the role of AI, and this also ended up just being like a question that was fielded by the public audience on like should there be a role in promoting or regulating like these different like just regulations around like artificial intelligence. So that was one other thing that they touched on. But overall, like all the different points and topics, and even the questions that we fielded as moderators wanted to make sure that they were very specific, um, in order for, I guess, just the community members to be able to hear things that maybe they haven't been able to hear at other public forums or debates, and also just to make sure that like the candidates were properly answering the questions, especially with like the different time constraints, in order to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to speak.
Yeah, in your statement, you've noted that the American Whig-Clio Society has fostered really rigorous debates for over 2 centuries. So, how does an event like this, a student-led event, fit into that long tradition of strengthening democracy through this type of open dialogue?
Yeah. The society has always been student led, like, and then complying with university policies, and just having this opportunity for community members, students, faculty, staff to come and be able to hear from like the people that are running to represent them directly, ask their questions, and also just be able to be in conversation with them. A lot of the candidates stayed after, to be able to just hear from the community members, hear their concerns, and hear the different things that people wanted to see being enacted. Really, I think facilitates this discourse in ways where a lot of these people are now a lot more accessible to them, where we're bringing the candidates directly to the people, and the communication there is able to happen. Whereas, like, unfortunately, other times it may not be due to other like time constraints, due to not being able to find like contact information and all these other different things. So just being able to do this one event today has like helped people kind of form a better kind of like idea of who they're voting for, maybe what issues they hadn't looked into that they want to look into now, and then as a result, who they're eventually going to cast their vote for, when the election comes.
Yep, and June 2nd, primary election day is fast approaching. Alejandra, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, and then congratulations on a really successful debate.
Thank you so much.
Managing 11 people is no easy feat. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Two small words, gross versus net, could mean a massive hit for New Jersey's small businesses. Governor Mikie Sherrill's budget proposal includes changes to business taxation that critics say could shift the focus from taxing profits to something closer to taxing revenue. Assemblyman Mike Inganamort recently pressed the state treasurer on the issue, warning that businesses operating on thin margins could be squeezed out today. The Assemblyman joins us to talk more about it. Assemblyman, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Laura.
All right, well, let's just talk a little bit about, you recently posted on social media saying there's a big difference between gross versus net. So can you talk a little bit about that distinction and why it is such a big deal for small businesses in New Jersey?
Absolutely, Laura. Listen, for two small words, they really pack a punch, particularly for small businesses that are looking at their revenue in the state of New Jersey. And frankly, I'm completely at a loss as to why the governor would look at gross revenue as the measuring stick for a small business's profitability when the two are just on different planes of magnitude. So gross revenue are the dollars that a business collects from the items that it sells before it pays for those items. This is especially true in the retail space, in the restaurant space, or even the small family-owned independent gas station, which was the example I used with the state treasurer. When you gauge a small business based on its gross revenue, you can get some really unexpected assumptions and measurements. And I think what happens is, in this case, the governor is proposing eliminating certain deductions for that business to carry forward its losses. That's something we want to soften the blow of in our tax code to ensure that small businesses continue to hire people, invest in the community, grow in the state of New Jersey. But when you limit those deductions and limit them based on a measuring stick that frankly is detached from the actual profitability of the business, I think this is going to be a net, there's that word again, cause a lot of net damage to businesses in New Jersey.
I mean, the devil is in the detail. You laid out what you described are these serious flaws in Governor Sherrill's proposed changes. When you spoke with the state treasurer, can you talk a little bit about, if you can, how taxing the gross, unfairly impacts these businesses that are operating so many on thin margins? And like, you mentioned the real world example of the gas station.
That's exactly right. So using that gas station again, if you look at last year, the average independent, small, family-owned gas station in the state of New Jersey sold around 1.2 million gallons of gas. Using last year's average gas price, which was around $3, that meant that that gas station was bringing in $3.6 million in gross revenue. That sounds like a lot of money until you consider that the gas station paid $3.2 million for the gas that it sold. You do a simple subtraction and you see very quickly that the gas station was only operating on around $400,000, which is the pot of money that small business has to use to pay for employees, to pay the rent, or a mortgage, or insurance, or credit card fees. You net out all of these expenses and you start to see why a gas station that has very high volume, $3.6 million in gross revenue, but very thin margins. In fact, many gas stations in the state of New Jersey operate at a loss. It's why they have an adjoining convenience store or an auto repair shop to make up for it. So by limiting the deductions to these businesses based on a metric, $3.6 million, that is totally detached from the reality of that small business that is making a fraction of that at net profit, if any at all, I think is not just onerous, it's frankly very damaging to that small business. And I don't see how many of these small businesses would even have the cash flow to cover a tax bill that large.
Right, right. Well, can we talk a little bit more about digging into this? Her budget, Governor Sherrill's budget, it includes limits on things like the alternative business calculation, deduction, a net operating loss carries forward. It's framed as, closing loopholes for larger companies. So, when you take those loopholes that you're closing for these larger companies, how do you see these changes effectively moving through taxation closer to gross revenue for many businesses?
Well, it's a great question, Laura, and you need to look at this in the context of how New Jersey maintains its edge against other states. And what I say to my friends in the majority party is, listen, you can disagree with me and the philosophy I have towards small business and taxation, but look at what New York is doing. Look at what Pennsylvania is doing. Look at what Delaware is doing. Each of those three states treat pass-through income, small business income in general, much more favorably than we do in the state of New Jersey. So what Governor Sherrill calls a corporate loophole, that's not correct. This is a best practice. Making this change initially back in 2011 when it came online made New Jersey more competitive in the way we as a state treated and continue to treat, at least for now, small businesses in comparison to the other states.
So what kind of businesses do you hear from the most? Restaurant, contractors, retailers? Who exactly would that hurt the hardest if these changes go through?
Well, given that New Jersey has the highest corporate business tax in all of America, of all the 50 states, and we rank at or near the bottom of most lists gauging business friendliness, I hear from all sorts of businesses in my district and throughout the state, small, medium, and large. I am especially concerned, however, for those medium and small businesses that get swept up in these policy changes. Listen, I'll give the governor the benefit of the doubt in this respect. I think she is intent on targeting large employers in the state of New Jersey. I think that's wrong as well. But nevertheless, what we see happen is that the impact, when you change the tax code for the large businesses, it invariably affects the small guys as well, particularly when you're looking at things like gross revenue, which makes a small business look like a big one when in fact it's not.
Right, right. I mean, and this is something, in New Jersey, I believe New Jersey Business and Industry Association talks about how upwards of 80% of business in New Jersey is small business. Now, you brought facts and real-world examples to the state treasurer. So what was the response, and how do you feel the administration, rather, is open to rethink or, entertaining some of these points that you are bringing up as you move forward with the proposal?
Great question, Laura. I asked the state treasurer that specifically. Is this something we can work together in a bipartisan way to fix? I use the word fix because I think it's a problem that needs to be fixed. The state treasurer used slightly different words, but he, by my measure, expressed a willingness to work together to try to work on this issue. I would like to see New Jersey maintain its position, at least in this very small respect, where we actually are competitive with other states, particularly our neighboring states, to take away this deduction from small businesses who are already paying the highest corporate business taxes in all of America, just sets us back even further. And if you're a small business, you start to wonder, why am I operating in the state of New Jersey when I go through far less expense, grief, regulation, and taxation in any of the 49 other states?
Also, especially in certain areas in New Jersey, depending where you are, literally it's right across the river, go over to Pennsylvania or over into New York. What message do you have for small business owners watching? And what would you like your colleagues in the legislature to do about this issue?
Well, I would encourage my colleagues to be wary of that metaphor, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You may think that you are doing something targeted at large businesses, and you may think that's the right thing to do. But I just gave a very specific example of how changes to the corporate business tax in the state of New Jersey always hit those medium and small businesses the hardest, the ones that are least able to cover the tax bill, which is, I'm going to say it again, the largest in all of America. So to my colleagues across the aisle, I would ask them to please work together in a bipartisan way to make New Jersey more business friendly. My message to small businesses in the state of New Jersey: you've stuck it out this long. Please hang with us. We need you in the state of New Jersey. And I, for one, am going to do everything I can in the state legislature to make it easier to start, own, operate a small business in the state of New Jersey so that you can experience the American dream and bring others along with you. Hire more New Jerseyans so that they too can achieve economic success in New Jersey.
So much of what makes New Jersey, so much of its charm is in the tiny towns, right? I live in Lambertville. Last weekend I was in Frenchtown, and there are, some new restaurants that have opened up, and then you see other businesses that are shuttering or that aren't able to make it. So can you just talk a little bit about, how vital it is to towns, not just the business, but quality of life? People love coming to Lambertville and looking at walking through the small businesses, finding things that you can't find. Anybody can go to a huge mall. Well, not so much anymore because many of the malls are closed, but right, that there are a lot of, big box stores. There's something so fun and exciting about going to places. Oh, you can only find this here. You can only find this in Lambertville. You can only find this in Clinton. You can only find this in Frenchtown or Princeton or what have you. I know I'm kind of staying to 100 and Mercer, showing my little bias right there. But what do you have to say to that?
Well, Laura, I would tell you to lift your gaze north, check out some of the beautiful small towns. I'm proud to live in Chester, which has a beautiful downtown full of small businesses, small shops, retail. We have a lot of antique stores in Chester. Newton, another beautiful downtown, Branchville. These are the beating hearts of communities that support our communities. They sponsor the T-ball team. They sponsor the dance group, and they are plugged into our communities in every way you can imagine. And so as we express concern as legislators, as citizens, around not only the big box stores, but the large warehouses that are coming into many of our communities to support more of the online shopping that occurs on the Amazons and similar platforms. My message is the best thing you can do to prevent that creep of large warehouses and online shopping from coming into our communities is to do everything we can to support the small businesses that are here. And when I say small, in these downtowns, whether it's Lambertville or Chester or you name it, these are the smallest of the small businesses operating on very thin margins and supporting our communities in so many other ways. So I'd like to see the state of New Jersey take a friendlier attitude towards small businesses in New Jersey. That's why I've introduced legislation making the first $50,000 of small business income tax-free on your state income tax. Imagine what that would do to small businesses in our downtowns.
You bring up such a good point that it just made the light bulb go in my head. Yes, where I go get my gas, it's a little bit more expensive. But one, they'll come and drop my car off at my house, right? You don't get that kind of customer service other places. But two, they're sponsoring the football teams, the little league teams. They are putting investment in our young people, and that's something I didn't even think about. But now that you mention it, it's like, wait a minute, you go to, yeah, those, their t-shirts, you can see Sefeli Sunoco is sponsoring this, or you know, the steakhouse is sponsoring that. This store is sponsoring these young athletes. And especially when you have a lot of school districts that aren't able to provide what they can, you know, it's really important what they are doing to support our communities.
Isn't that the truth, Laura? You're really we're singing from the same song sheet here, because the small towns I represent, I have the privilege of representing 32 small towns, and they deserve better from the state of New Jersey. I'm talking about the municipalities now, not just the small businesses that add that vitality and bring them alive. It's why another thing I've done in the legislature is introduce a 20 bill package I'm calling the Small Town Rescue Plan, to make it easier to operate, to lead, and to run a vibrant small town in the state of New Jersey. I used to be the mayor of Chester, population right around 8,000 people. We do a lot of things really well here in Chester, but what makes it challenging and difficult, this is true at the municipal level, and I know it's true at the small business level as well, are the increasing mandates, regulation, and higher taxes from the state of New Jersey. I just wish the state would get off our backs and let these beautiful, charming, to use your word, small towns throughout New Jersey thrive and flourish.
I mean, really, there's so much beauty in New Jersey. It gets a bad rap from a lot of other states, but there is so much beauty. We could spend the rest of a half hour talking about this, but our time has come to an end. Assemblyman, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura. Great to be with you.
And that'll do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. So we look forward to seeing you back here next time.